So this basically is optional lab time, and I'll be answering any questions anyone has over any of the lectures I've posted, or if you just want a deeper understanding of what the homework assignments are going to be like. And as I said before, feel free to email me any questions you have in the class email or through Canvas, or you could use the chat in here. This is just optional lab time for anyone who has any questions or concerns or wants any deeper explanations or understanding of the first assignment, which is in the syllabus. I believe it's due in about 5 or 6 weeks. But you can check the syllabus for that. The old syllabus, which I will update after class tonight, it's Canvas, this course, Files, the 2021, and there's the syllabus. The due date for the first assignment is in red. It's going to be assigned next week. You're going to be animating a movie logo, and it will be due week 7, 0301. And basically, you'll be animating a logo for a movie company or a TV studio. So think of a normal logo that you would do for like graphic design, and then we're going to animate it. And if you find anything online that interests you, I can help break it down and show you the tips and techniques to get there. With motion design, you're going to be learning as you go along with the videos, but I'll also instruct you on the specific things you need to learn to get your logos looking their best on time for the assignment as well. So reach out to me with any sketches or ideas you have, and I will gladly show you how to animate them. But that will officially be next week when the assignment starts. And like I said, you have until March 1st, January, February, March, 0301. But the basics of motion design, the 4 main pillars that I talk about, it's position, scale, rotation, and transparency. And each one of them can be found on every layer you bring into After Effects or that you create. You just twirl down the arrow for that layer. And then under Transform, position, scale, rotation, and transparency. And as you can see, this whole animation was done just with scaling. I animated one shape and then duplicated it and just pushed the layer down in the timeline to get that more complex animation. I'm going to show you a lot of tips and tricks for motion design, but this is called offsetting your animation, where if I hit the U key on my keyboard, you can see the keyframes that I created, and I just made 3. I went from 0 to 100 to 0, so it's scaling up and then scaling down over time, and then I just duplicated that layer by hitting Command D or Control D, and then I just slid each layer down a little bit in time so that it comes in one color at a time and then goes off the screen. And then I just hit U to hide all my keyframes and give myself a little bit more space in my timeline. But I will go into this basic workflow while you're here, just in case anyone had any questions about it. It's always think about what you want to do and then try and figure out how to get there. So I'm going to create a new composition with my new composition button over here. Everything you're going to be doing for this class will be 1920 by 1080, 24 frames, and then depending upon the length of the assignment, it'll be between like 10 to 15 seconds for each homework assignment. So you could also get there by going composition, new composition. So it's that button or right there. 1920 by 1080, 24 frames, between 10 and 15 seconds. You could always click and type in whatever you want, but you're going to be doing this so often that, when you're going through the lectures, that it just becomes, muscle memory. 1920 by 1080 is 2K resolution. That's high def, 24 frames, and then 10 seconds. So time code goes hours, minutes, seconds, frames. If I just typed in 10, that'd be 10 frames. It has to be 10 period 00 for the 10 seconds. So I'm going to just have a square move across the screen, which is simple position animation. Your shapes, just like in Illustrator, they're all right here, or you could use the pen tool. I'll use the pen tool for this. If you click on the swatches up here at the top, that's for your color. If you click the word fill, that's how you can turn off or on a fill, just like the tools in Illustrator. So I'm just going to quickly draw a blob here, and there is my shape, and here's the fill. If I wanted a stroke, I'd click the word stroke and choose the type of stroke I want, and then I could make it thicker or thinner, and then I click the thumbnail to change the color of it. And I don't want that stroke, so I'm just going to get rid of it by clicking the word, just showing you how that's done. So I've got my shape, and the next thing is, I know I want to move it, that's position. So I could twirl down my arrows and go to the stopwatch I need, which is position here, or I could just hit the P key with that layer selected in my timeline. You move the playhead to where you want your motion to start. Let's say I wanted to start here. This is where I want it to start. You click the stopwatch you want to animate, and then all you have to do is just move the playhead and make whatever change you want. So I know I want this to move. I could either click and drag it, and if I hold down Shift, it'll make it move straight across. There's my motion line. Or I could use the numbers by clicking and dragging, or I could type in a specific number. That's the 3 ways of getting something to move. You could type it in, hover over, click and drag, or you could just simply move it on your composition. So that's my basic motion right there. Anything with a stopwatch in After Effects can be animated. So let's look at an effect for this real quick. You could throw an effect on the art, or you could put it on the layer. Either one will work. And you can see the effect is on the art already. And I've got all these stopwatches here, so I can, over time, animate this. So let's say I move my playhead and I want the motion to start here. And then as it gets to here, that's where the roughening will take place. And then by the time it gets to here, it'll start to unroughen. You just have to keep finding where your keyframes are, or you could just hit the U key and it'll show you every stopwatch that you've animated. Another little trick I'm going to show you while I have you all in here at the moment. This button right here will show paths and masks. So you can click it on or off. Sometimes it's very helpful to turn that off so that you can see your effects better and your layer blending that you're going to be doing down the road. But like I said, the overall idea is think about what you want to do, move the playhead to where you want that motion to start, click on the appropriate stopwatch you want to change, and then move your playhead and make a change. You're going to need a minimum of 2 keyframes to do anything. Think about it as position. It's here, and then it's over there. They have to be at least 1 frame apart. It's graphic design, adding in time and space. Here's your time, how far in time you're going. So if I move these keyframes closer, it'll move faster. The closer the keyframes, the faster the change. You could always slide it further away if you want to move slower. That's all up to you as the designer. I'm going to delete that layer. And I'm going to show you a little something here with this star. I use basic shapes when I'm teaching because I teach the concept, and once you know the concept, you can put whatever artwork you want into that concept. Like this could be a photo, it could be a video clip, whatever. The concepts are what are crucial to learn. So I'm going to go over to my Align tab right here. All your tabs are over here on the side. And if you don't have the Align, you just go Window, Align, and it'll pop up over there. With my shape layer selected, I can center align it and then vertically align it so I know it's in the center of my screen. So I told you, think about what you want to do, then figure out what you want to animate. I'm going to want this to swing back and forth like a pendulum. Well, if I want it to swing like a pendulum, I have to move the anchor point. Here's my anchor point right over here. And you've used anchor points in Illustrator and Photoshop for like scaling things or making things line up. But in After Effects, the anchor point is what drives the animation. And I'll show you what I mean by that. This tool right here, I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. So here's where I got my shapes. Your selection arrow is for moving things around if you need to. But then this right here is the pan behind tool. That's used for moving your anchor point, okay? So I'm gonna zoom out. So here's my star. If I use my pan behind tool and I start dragging, if I hold down the command or control, it'll snap to a center or an edge or a midpoint. So it's a fast way of aligning something. I'm gonna put this here at the center and watch what happens if I scale it. If I scale it with the anchor point in the center, it's going to uniformly push out in every direction. Okay? Now, if I move that anchor point, say to this bottom corner with my pan behind tool, and then I scale, notice how it's scaling from that corner point. Where the anchor point is will drive your animation. Okay? So if I put this in the center and I hit R for rotate, remember you can get to all of your properties right here by twirling down, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. Or you can just select the layer and hit R for rotation. There's a stopwatch for it. T for transparency, P for position, or S for scale. I'm going to use R for rotate. Now I'm going to explain something here. Like I said, all this is in my lectures, but I'm just showing you a few things that will be in deeper lectures. When you're doing things like rotate, this first number here is full rotations, a complete circle. So if I typed 2, it would be 2 full circles it'd rotate. If I want to do a certain amount of degrees, it'd be the second number right there. So I'm just going to spin this right here, and you can see with the anchor point in the middle, it'll spin around like a propeller blade. But if I move the anchor point up to the top, and then I rotate, it's going to swing side to side like a pendulum. That's why I say think about what you want to do, then move your anchor point. You got to move your anchor point before you click on any of your stopwatches, because the anchor point drives the animation. If you do your keyframing with your stopwatches, then move the anchor point, the artwork's going to move around. That's not what you want, so you always do it first. So I'm going to move it up here, go back to my selection arrow, and then the next step, you move the playhead to wherever you want to start your animation. I'll start right here. Then you click the stopwatch that you want for your motion. Mine's rotation. Again, all of them are right here under transform for every layer. Then you just move your playhead however far in the timeline you want. The closer it is, the faster the change. The further away, the slower the change. So I'll move it about here, and then I'm just gonna click and drag. So I'm gonna have it go up that way. Then I can move over here. You could also go in a negative direction, so it's gonna go in the opposite direction. You go back the other way. And again with the opposite. And then lastly, I'm going to type in a number for the change. So that gives me the swinging back and forth animation. Like I said, you need a minimum of 2 keyframes to make anything happen. It's over here, then it swings to over there. This is one rotation, that's a different rotation. You need 2 keyframes, they need to be at least 1 frame apart for anything to happen. And another thing I'm going to show you why I have you here. At the top of your timeline, you have this bar you can slide back and forth. This is your render area. This is what the computer will render for your animation. So if I want to just loop this, I move that render area a little bit tighter. And then I could just move this end, oops, grab that, like that. So then when I hit my space bar, it'll loop that animation more tightly, and then I can fine tune it. Think about what you want to do, then move the anchor point with the pan behind tool. You gotta select the layer first with your arrow tool. So you select your layer, then you move your anchor point, and then move your playhead. Then you click your stopwatch, move the playhead again, and make your change. That's your basic workflow, and you're going to be doing this thousands of times throughout the semester. Any questions? Did anybody watch the first week's lectures yet? This is all covered in detail in there. I'm just giving a little refresher here. And also, if it didn't make sense, seeing it live sometimes helps you out as well. And again, start looking at logo animations that inspire you. You could send me the link to it. Just find it on YouTube, send me the link through email, and I'll break down how that animation was and if you're able to do it. And what I mean by that is some more advanced animations are done with third-party plugins that don't come with After Effects. And you can animate as many stopwatches as you want. Just always move your playhead where you want your animation to start. So if I want to animate the position of this, I move the playhead to where I want, click the position stopwatch, move my playhead, and then I move it however I want. Let's just say I want to go diagonally this time. Combining different property changes over time is what will give you a more intricate, professional, polished animation. So I could have this scale away. I could just click scale there. And then if I want to scale it there. and then you just hit the spacebar to render it. So I animated 3 different properties, position, scale, and rotation, and you see my keyframes don't line up. The week 1 videos, okay, those are, all right, so if I go to my dashboard, here's my class, click on the class. All of the things for the course are in files. So then you could go over to the semester, the virtual one, and you will see this document. This has all of the links for the entire semester laid out. And in case you forget where that is, it's right there in the virtual folder. You could always go to announcements. Here's my welcome to everybody. And then the second announcement, you just click on the head. And it's all laid out there by week. And when you do look at it, I want you to pay attention. I put up here the labs. These are labs from last year. You don't have to watch the lab videos, but you could always get some extra learning and see what the other students did for those labs and how they were coming up with ideas. But the lectures, that's what you're going to need to get through and learn. All of your artwork, the images, the photos, the videos, your After Effects files, put those in the Google Drive folders that I made for everyone. I sent out an email with a link to your folder. Everyone has their own individual folder, and you will not have to worry about someone messing up what's in your folder because only you have access to it. So again, like I said, you could just go to announcements. There's all the lectures right there, or you could get to them through files, this semester, and they're right there. And I'm going to update the syllabus. I made it a little bit easier to read, but basically all the due dates did not change. So I hope that helps with your question. I'm glad that, some of you hopped on. I'm always going to edit down my lectures, not the lectures are done, the labs. I'm going to edit them down, cut out all the dead space, and just keep the pertinent information, and then have it up a day or 2 later on my YouTube channel, and I'll send the link to everyone through email, just that you could see. And that's also, if you've got a question, say for your logo, and you're like, I don't know how to do this, and you can't make one of the optional, all my labs are optional, the lab time. If you can't make the designated lab that week, email me your question beforehand and I'll answer it here, record my screen and then post up the answer for you so that you can get the information that way. So I hope that helps. It was a big help with, not last semester, but the one before that, right at the beginning of the lockdowns. The lab time was crucial and the students really learned a lot from it, and they liked hanging out and chatting during the course, so it's always a good way of keeping in touch and seeing what everyone's up to. So since some of you have not seen the lectures, I'm just going to do that basic overview one more time. I already saved my file. Save frequently, After Effects crashes a lot. So I could either go composition, new composition, or keep working on something I already did, like you would make your homework. So I'll show you. So if I go File, Save As, I just call it, my initials, and then save it, then you can start working on your logo animation. But once you've got that open, if you don't already have composition set up, you just go Composition, New Composition, or you can click the New Composition button right there on your project panel. It's going to be 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second, 10 seconds or 15 seconds. It's whatever, you want, but you have to have that period, 10 period 00 or 15 period 00, and click OK. And then you're in here, and you can start animating your logos. If you're more comfortable working in Illustrator, you could bring in Illustrator artwork in here and animate it that way. It's all what you want. But if you're just doing simple shapes, like let's pretend my logo would be this plus, let's just say a square. Anything you can create with the pen tool or the shapes tool, you're better off doing it in After Effects. Because you're just going to save yourself a lot of time not having to import everything. But if you're better with like gradients and tools like that, work in Illustrator, and I have videos that show you how to import it. But one of the beauties of using the pen tool in After Effects, let's say I've got this shape right here. Okay, that's part of my logo, let's just pretend. Well, remember, all of your information is right here in every layer. So transform would be, position, scale, rotation, and transparency. That's basically the 4 pillars of motion design. But also, you've got information about every shape layer that you draw. And right here is the path that I drew. And you might go saying, well, why is it so useful to make your paths in After Effects? If I click the stopwatch for that path, remember, move the playhead to where you want the motion to start, like right here. I can click that stopwatch, and then I can move forward however far I want. Now, if I hold down Shift, that will deselect this one point, and I can just click on it to select that one point. But you can not only move your path points in After Effects, but you can also move Bezier curve handles as well. Okay, so you see my path animating over time, and you can animate more than one path point or Bezier curve at a time, should you choose to get the look you want. See? So you can move them individually or multiple ones at the same time. It's all on the motion that you want to get. I'm going to delete that and show you one other fun thing about the pen tool in After Effects. So here's my shape, like such. And if I want to animate this, I just scroll down to my path, move the playhead to where I want the motion to start, click the stopwatch, and then move my playhead and start changing it. Remember, the closer you move the playhead, the faster the motion changes are going to be. So I'm going to go back to my arrow tool. I held down Shift to deselect that one point, and then I just clicked it to select it. So I can move this in, but watch this next thing. So you can move the path points, and you can also move your Bezier curve handles. This is an interesting thing, and it'll help you out a lot when you're animating. In After Effects, if you've got your path point selected, if I start dragging this Bezier curve handle, and then I hold down Alt or Option, notice I'm only moving one handle, okay? This is really good for fine-tuning your shapes and your motion. So I could move both, and then I could hold down Alt or Option once I've got that curve looking the way I want, and then only animate one part of that Bezier curve handle. So you just start dragging, then you hold down Alt or Option to lock it. And you're going to notice if I want to move this straight up or down, I start dragging, then I hold down Shift to constrain the motion up or down. That'll help you out a lot too. And then, I'm just holding down Alt, like such. So those are a couple little shortcuts to help you along the way when you're starting to think of your logos. And actually, while I've got you all here, when you're in Canvas, in the files and then this semester, I've got a folder called Reference Files. And here's reference for homework 1. It's a bunch of PDFs and links to things I found online that, might just be helpful for you to give you a little bit of inspiration. And when you're watching other people's animations online to get inspiration, click the gear, playback speed, then slow it down. And you'll get a better view of what they're doing. What you see right here, that fade on, that's opacity. And you only animate paths made in After Effects. Okay, and Alexis, I'll get to your question in a second. You can animate paths you made in Illustrator. Let me show you real fast, and then Alexis, I'll answer your question. If you draw your logo in Illustrator, then upload it into After Effects, are you still able to manipulate the paths? Yep, okay, that's fine. See, I like you listening, I like you thinking, that's what I'm here for. And, those people who couldn't attend tonight, they're going to get the whittled down version of this. So I'm going to go to New. And I'm glad you brought this up. But when you're in Illustrator, there's an HD template already, 1920 by 1080. You see it all right here. And this is what we're doing for our class. So you just click on that template and then create, and you're going to be good to go. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make a shape, and I'm not going to bore you making a perfect, precise shape. So here's my shape, and here's my stroke. All right, let's do something you'll really see pretty easily. Let's give it a gradient. All right, and then the stroke, let's change the stroke of it real fast. There's properties. Your properties are all over here. I'll make it something obnoxious that you can see. Okay, so your work is going to be cleaner. It's going to be more tight and professional. But, okay, so here's a fill and a stroke on a shape I drew. And then I'm going to make a layer by clicking the add button right here. And let's do polygon, sure, like that. And we'll give it something different. Oh, that was the stroke. That's funny. So I'm going to just flip that and then get rid of my stroke. All right, there we go. And then lastly, I'll make one more layer and put in some type. And yeah, I know I misspelled logo, I don't care. Just makes the class more fun. Okay, so I've got 3 layers with my shapes, and I'm going to save this to my desktop. Now you'll save it wherever you want, but when you put your work in Google Drive, I'm going to need this file. So I'll need the Illustrator file and your After Effects file. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as an Illustrator file because that's the most robust. I'm not going to change anything, it's just the default settings. So there's our 3 layers, and I'm going to go back to After Effects now. When you do anything into After Effects, you just go File, Import File. And you can import as many files as you want doing this, and they just choose where it is. Your best bet is to have a folder with all your artwork in it, and you upload that folder into Google Drive. That will help keep things together. Just like with print design, if I move this logo, the link will break in After Effects. That's why it's good to keep everything in one folder, like your After Effects and your logo. So I select my artwork, but here's the important thing. I'm going to drop down to Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. And remember, I'm going to edit this down and put it up so you'll all have it. So you can take your notes and you can also watch this again. But it's right there. Composition, Retain Layer Sizes, and choose Import. And you'll notice right here I've got a composition for it already, and it's 1920 by 1080. And look, each piece of artwork is on its own layer. When you're designing, it's good to put stuff on different layers so that you have more flexibility as an animator. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Now, you can add stuff by using your tools right here. You can also go Layer, New to add whatever you want, like text or a solid. And the difference between a solid and a shape layer is this. A solid layer will not have path points. So it's going to be like just a big rectangle, and you can make it any size you want in any color you want. I'm just going to do this light blue. And here's where you change the size, or you can just click Make Comp Size, so it's automatically whatever size your composition is. And think of this as the TV screen or computer monitor or movie screen. This is what the audience is going to see, okay? Your viewer. wherever you have stuff in your layer stack, that's where it's going to be seen. So the bottom, that's what's the bottommost, and the top, that's what's topmost. So if I wanted this logo text to be behind, you just move it. And if I named these layers before I brought them in, they would have been named. So let's take a look at what we've got. If I hit the Enter key on my keyboard, that'll help me rename the layer, or I could select the layer, right click and choose rename. And then by default, this would be my logo type. So I'm just hitting enter. Okay, so we've got our artwork. Yours is going to look pretty. You said, well, can I convert this into paths? Like say the blob, I want to animate that, but I like this gradient. Okay. All you do is you select the layer you want. Remember, the more layers, the better, because you've got flexibility. If all this was one layer, I'd have trouble animating just the blob. That's why I work on separate layers, so that things don't, overlap. It gives me more options. So if I right click and I choose create shapes from vector layer. So all I did was select the layer I want, right click, create, then create shapes from vector layer, like such. And now you see the fill is gone, but I've still got the reference if I want to add a gradient back into it. Now I'm going to show you one other thing real fast. Let's pretend I want this polygon to stay in Illustrator file because I like that gradient. I think it's gorgeous. Every Illustrator layer you bring into After Effects that you will not convert into a shape layer, you have to click, I'll zoom in, this little gear icon. This is continuous rasterization. I'll explain that in a second. If you're not seeing this, these are called your switches. They're little checkboxes for each layer. If you're not seeing your switches, you're seeing this. These are your modes. These are like blending modes in Photoshop. So this is what the modes look like. And right down here at the bottom of your timeline is toggle switches and modes. So that's how you get back and forth between the two, which you'll be doing a lot of as you get deeper into After Effects. So you just click on what you need. I need my switches. So right there, and that's where you can turn off or on continuous rasterization. What that's going to do is it's going to keep your artwork crisp and clean with good, clean edges as you scale it up and down, okay? So if you're sticking with Illustrator, you gotta continuously rasterize every layer you bring in. We'll jump back to the shape layer we made. I can hide the original artwork. The icon switches here, they just hide that layer, but it's still there. So I just hit it, it's still there. So here's the shape layer we made. So if I twirl down my contents, there's two groups. And the reason there's two groups is because there's a fill and a stroke. So what I could do, if I want this top one to be the fill, I'm going to do this the right way so that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. All right, watch this. I'm going to right click, and this is a good time to tell you right now, 85% of motion design is troubleshooting. It's all mental. You got to figure out what you want to do and then figure out how to get there. So I'm going to explain that in a second. So remember, this is the art I want to change. So I right clicked and I created shapes from vector layer, okay? Now let's clean this up. There's two groups. Let's get rid of the first one. Okay, so I've got one shape. And you're like, oh no, I lost that fill. Follow me on this. I'm going to get rid of the fill here, and it's just a stroke. And remember, I can make it thicker so you see what I'm doing. And I'll hide these layers just so you can focus on what I'm doing. Alright, now I know I want to animate this shape, okay? So I twirl down my contents for that layer, and I animate the path, I move forward, move what I want, how I want, and remember, you can animate the path points as well as the Bezier curve handles, and you can also hold down Alt or Option while you're dragging the curve handle to change just one side of your Bezier curve, okay? So there's my shape changing. All right, well, what about the fill? Well, watch this. Do all your animating, okay? So let's pretend that's my full animation. I can duplicate this layer by hitting Command D in my timeline, or I could go Edit Duplicate. So select the layer you want, duplicate it. Now watch this. On the duplicate, let's call this one Stroke, and then this one we'll call Fill. So my stroke has, I'm going to get rid of the fill on it. It just has that stroke. Now on the fill, which is the duplicate of this, I'm going to add a fill to it. Okay, it's not letting me. That's fine. No worries. First I'm going to turn off the stroke. Now you're going to see the reason it's not letting me add a fill is because there's only a stroke here, okay? Now, when you've got shape layers, you select the shape layer you want. I want the fill, and you gotta have your selection arrow loaded. I can go to Add right here, or Add up there. Select the layer first, with your arrow tool, choose Add. I want to add a fill. Think of your shape layer like an empty salad bowl, okay? So now it has a fill, I can make it any color I want, or I can click the word fill. There's our solid. Here's a gradient. I can add the gradient in, and you'll notice my gradient is right here under those layer contents. Let me change that from a radial to a linear gradient. Okay, now we're starting to see it right there on the edge. Alright, so if I move my playhead, you notice they both move together. So your best bet is to animate your stroke first, duplicate the layer that you animated, and then turn it into a fill on top of that. Whenever you duplicate a layer, you duplicate all the keyframes and all the effects on it, okay? Another reason to, bring this in to After Effects and work on it here. So you saw that we added a fill to it, okay? And then I turned that fill into a gradient. Well, this is After Effects, and as I said before, anything with a stopwatch can be animated over time. Just move the playhead to where you want to animate it, click the stopwatch, and then make your change. So we're animating the stroke, the fill, and the gradient over time. If I select that layer and I hit the U key, that cleans up all the garbage, and I just see the stopwatches I clicked. So I can edit them further if I chose to. Think about what you want to do and then try and figure out how to get there. I wanted this shape to move, and I wanted to keep the stroke and the fill moving perfectly. So all I did was I just animated the stroke layer. I could, keep changing it if I want to. And then I would just simply use this as reference, but I'd duplicate it again. I'm going to hide this. Let's say I want to have a few more stops of motion in here. Well, you'll notice my path points are gone. But if I click the word path again, there they are. So I had to be selected on my path. So I'm holding down Shift to deselect that one point, and then I clicked on it again to get the motion. Oops, that's all of them. I can move that path some more. Then move this up. Okay, so there's the extra motion. I just duplicate it again, and I could just add the fill back into this duplicate and get rid of the original one. Yes, you can bring in shapes from Illustrator, and then you can convert them, or you keep them as is because you like the artwork. Just make sure you continuously rasterize it. If you don't see your switches, just click your toggle switches and modes button right here. These are your modes, they're blending modes, or just click that and there's your switches. Just make sure you got the layer selected, and then continuously rasterize it. The eyeball icons will show or hide layers you've got. And whatever's on top of your layer stack is what's on top of what the viewer is going to see. And this is like your screen that they're going to be watching it on. So what you see here is what they're going to see. So let's look at the logo text. Let's pretend I want that to just animate straight down onto the screen. So I'm going to show you a little trick here. Let's pretend that I want the final text to be right here. This is where I want it to end up. So I selected that layer and I hit P for position, or you could use your stopwatch, your twirl downs right here and get to position right there. Works the same both ways. So that's where I want it to end up when I want it to end up. At this point in time, at this position. Well, I can work backwards. You could go forward or backwards in your timeline. And let's say I want to start coming onto the screen here. All I gotta do is I could either move it on this one axis. This is your side to side. This is your up and down. Or I just click and drag with my selection arrow. So now it's moving down onto the screen. And I'm gonna go to this. I'm gonna move it a little bit higher just to be on the safe side. I wanna make sure it's clear of the screen right there. So that this is what the viewer sees. It's off the screen. So then it's going to animate down onto it. And while I've got you here, I'm going to give you a couple little helpful tips. First off, when you're all used to Illustrator and Photoshop, okay, do not hit Command or Control 0, okay? In Illustrator and Photoshop, that will fit your view to the screen. You do not do that in here. If I hit Command or Control 0, I start closing panels. You don't want that to happen, so you just hit Command or Control 0 to open it back up. Here's how you change your magnification. Just click down here, and you can just go to Fit, or you could zoom out. See, I zoomed out so I could see where the edge of the screen was. All this is dead space. It's like your pasteboard in InDesign or Illustrator. They're not going to see what's out here, but you could use it to position things to enter onto the screen. So this does not render, they're not going to see it, but you can use it to have stuff come in where you want it to. It's like this polygon. If I put it here, well, they're going to see this because see, it's on the screen. Put it over here, they're not going to see it. On screen, off screen. Change the magnification, go over here to the little drop down menu. So don't hit Command 0 or Control 0. That's the first thing that a lot of people get wrong. Second thing people get wrong, do not keep caps lock on. If I turn caps lock on and I hit my space bar, see right there, when I drag my playhead, refresh disabled, release caps lock. You keep caps lock on, you can't preview your animation. Just turn caps lock off your keyboard. Now I can click and drag and watch my animation. Spacebar will play your animation, okay? But when I grab my playhead right here, this is the playhead. If I click and drag, that's called scrubbing. Scrubbing is a way of going through your timeline faster and just seeing the parts you want and preview things, making sure they come in the right order, okay? You don't have to wait for your animation to render. You can just scrub with your playhead. So I went over caps lock, turn it off if you're not previewing. Command 0, you don't want to go doing that. Use over here and go to Fit. And here's the last thing. Here's the last hot tip. These things, trust me, you're gonna have it happen, you go, oh no, how do I undo that? Okay. So, over here I've got my project panel. This is where everything you import comes in. It's all right here. It's like a big folder for everything to go into. That's your project panel. And you notice as I click from panel to panel, they light up blue, okay? So now I'm on my composition panel. The composition, this is the screen, what the viewer is going to see. Remember, this is off the screen. This part is on the screen. Everything in here is what they're going to see. Over here are where you get to all your effects or line up shapes. or your fonts to change them, okay? And then down here is your timeline. And you're going to notice that everything I worked on tonight, every animation I made a new composition for it. Here's all my compositions, and you can go from composition to composition in your timeline. Okay? So just make sure you're on the right composition that you want to work on. It's another useful tip. And lastly, this one, if I had $1 every time someone did it. So I explained the different panels to you, but up here you see, here's my composition, okay? I'm going to double click on this polygon layer. Okay, that's not going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get a piece of artwork, a photo. Okay, I'm just going to randomly grab one off of Google. And here's a tip for you when you're getting artwork online off of Google. Click Tools when you're in Images. First off, you want to try and get creative licensed free stuff. Okay, you don't want to go grabbing copyrighted stuff. You'll just get yourself in trouble. And if you're looking for something transparent, just go Color, Transparent, and only transparent images will pop up. It's not what I want for this. I'm just going to turn that off. But I'm going to download you. I'll put this on my desktop. It's saved. And I'll get one that is transparent just for the fun of it, so you can see the difference. Remember, if I want to bring anything in, I just go File, Import, and then File. So I want those two photos, and they're right here. So I'm going to select them both at the same time, and I'm going to hit Import. Remember, when we brought in from Illustrator, I went down here, Import as Composition Retain Layer Sizes. That split up all the layers and kept them exactly where they were in Illustrator. You do the same thing if this was a Photoshop document. You just go right there to that, and you get all your layers. Same thing. Depends on how you want to work. Alright, so, there's the transparent tree. I don't want that. You'll notice when I click on my artwork here in the project panel, I get a little thumbnail up here showing what I've got clicked on. I want this photo. Anything you want to add into your animation, select the right thing, make sure it's the right one, drag it down into your timeline. And you go, oh, that's a bit too big. Well, if it's too big, I scale it down. I can scale it down over time, or I could just scale it as I place it. And I grab the wrong layer. It's this one right here. So I hit S for scale. Okay. Now you can see the photo. There it is. I'm using my arrow to move it around. This is another common mistake a lot of beginners do. Here's my composition right here. Watch what happens. If I double click on my artwork here, look what happened. A layer window opens up. All right, I'm no longer in my animation timeline. I'm inside this layer. I don't want that. You just click the X right here to close it. Now I'm back at my timeline. So watch what happens. If I double click on that accidentally and I move my playhead, you're not seeing any animation. You're not even seeing the other layers. This is just a look at what this piece of artwork is, okay? If I close it right here by clicking the X, now if I click and drag, see, I'm seeing all my layers and I'm seeing my motion. Those are the big mistakes a lot of people make. Double clicking a layer accidentally and opening it up in the layer panel right here, which you don't want. Just click that to close it. Hitting caps lock by accident. And then you see it's not going to render, so you turn off caps lock. And finally hitting Command or Control 0. Don't do that. Click right here to go to fit. Now, as you animate, you're going to, basically what the computer's doing is every frame it's taking an image of it, okay? The more complex your animation, the more detail, the more each frame is going to eat up memory on your computer, okay? So as you're working, when you're done at the end of every day, remember, save frequently. But here's another tip that's going to save your computer. Go Edit, purge all memory and disk cache. I'm gonna click that. I already ate up 1.6 gigs just making this lecture so far for you. Okay? As you're working, like when I'm at work throughout the day, sometimes each day I'm getting rid of 90 gigs of space, all these frames for the animation. Once you got your motion set up, delete all that stuff in here by going edit, purge, all memory and disk cache. See, even just moving that playhead created 219 megs of images because it's going frame, 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 frame. Each frame of animation it's creating an image for, okay? It's going to add up and slow you down. Yes, you can bring in layers of Photoshop, same way I showed you of doing it with Illustrator. You would just go File, Import File. And if this was a layered Photoshop document, we'll pretend this is Photoshop. You just go to Import As, down here, retain layer sizes. Then you'd have all your individual layers you created in Photoshop. Or if you work in Illustrator, boom. Illustrator, you can turn the layers to paths. You cannot do that with Photoshop because it's pixels. Illustrator works off of paths. That's raster. That's vector. Paths are vector, and you can animate the vector shapes. You cannot do that with your pixels, but you can put effects on them. And I'm going to show you one other thing real fast. So basically, off of this first design, I'm going to make a circle right here, move it around. If I want to align it, I just click Align over here. Say I want it there. Okay, so let's have this move over and then scale up. So first thing I want to do, how do I want it to scale up from? Let's have it scale up from the bottom. Oh wait, I've got something even better to show you instead. This will help you out quite handily. All right. So I've got a rectangle. You can see it's a rectangle, right? Watch this. Let's say we want this to open and close like elevator doors, okay? Well, that's going to be scale. But here's the catch. If I scale it, it's uniformly scaling, okay? First, let's say I want this door to open up from the left edge, all right? So I know I want the scaling to happen this way. So I get my pan behind tool and I move the anchor point. And if I hold down Command or Control, it'll snap to an edge or center or a corner point, okay? So I've got it right where I want it. See, you can see the motion, it's scaling up from there, fine. But I want it to open like an elevator door. Well, I've got everything set up. My anchor point's right, and I know I want it to scale. Right here, I'm going to zoom in so that you can see it. Right here is the uniform scale. I can turn that off. So now when I scale, it'll only be on the X or the Y. Y is up and down, X is side by side. And if you can't remember that, you could just scrub over and there you see it happening. So I move my playhead to where I want the motion to start. Click the stopwatch I want to animate, and then I move forward however much time I want the motion to be. Now, I've shown you if you make changes, you'll create a keyframe, okay? So I could change it here, I can click and drag, but I'm going to show you something new, a new way of making a keyframe. I can click this empty diamond for that layer, okay? So that created a keyframe. Nothing changed over time. These are exactly the same. That's fine. This button will go to the next keyframe. This will go to the previous keyframe. You see it moving in your timeline. So now I'm on the keyframe I want. And I'm going to change the X to 0. And what you'll see, over time, it's going to go from 0 on the X to whatever amount on the X. Okay? I clicked the little white arrow here. The reason I did that is because if I make a change anywhere in this timeline where the playhead is, that's going to create a new keyframe. All right? If you want extra keyframes, that's how you do it. You can have as many keyframes as you want. Okay? But you need at least 2 keyframes to do something. Just remember that wherever the playhead is, if you make a change, it's going to create a keyframe. So I wanted an exact change right here. That's why I used my next keyframe and previous keyframe buttons. So I'd be exactly where I wanted and make the change that I wanted. And I just move my render bar to check out my animation. Let's tighten it up a little bit. Then I hit the space bar to preview it. Think about what you want to do, then move the anchor point. So you select the layer first, move your anchor point with the pan behind, wherever you want it to be. Then you move your playhead where you want your motion to start. Then you click on the stopwatch you want to animate, and then you move your playhead forward in time, and you make your change. And every time you change something, where the anchor point, where the playhead is, that's 0. It's going to create a new keyframe. So just be careful. That's why these previous and next buttons are so invaluable, so that you don't accidentally create unwanted keyframes. And I'm going to make that a solid color. So I select my layer, use my selection arrow tool, and now I've got these options back. So I want to click the word fill and go to solid. There we go. And don't forget, when you've got a layer selected, if I hit Command D, it'll duplicate it. I can hit U. See, when you duplicate it, all effects, keyframes are still there. You can just slide it down a little bit in the timeline, change the color. See, there's my motion. If I select again, duplicate it, I can slide it down a few more frames, change the color to whatever I want. Animate once, get more detail and interest by offsetting your layers. I'm going to show you another common mistake sometimes people do in After Effects. I'm going to use a simple shape for this. Okay, so I made a rectangle, all right? Now watch what happens. If I've got this layer still selected, and let's say I want to make a star that is yellow. Well, watch what happened. That first shape changed color because I still have that shape layer selected, okay? Here's another thing I want to show you. If I've got this selected and I make a star, look what happened to my contents. There's my rectangle, there's my star. I've got 2 shapes in one shape layer. That's fine. You could do that. You could move this around however you want. Let's see if I can change the fill for just this one from here. Yep. And I could animate it however I want. But I'm just letting you know, if it's selected, you're going to make a shape inside that shape layer. So now I've got 2 shapes inside one layer because I did not deselect this. You can click off of the shape in your timeline. See, this is the layer selected right there, lit up. I click off, it's deselected. You'll also see over here, it's lit up white when I select that layer. I click off, it's deselected. Another way of deselecting is holding Command Shift A or Control Shift A. That'll deselect everything. So now if I make a shape, it's on a new layer because nothing was selected. But if I've got the shape layer selected and I add a shape to it, that shape goes inside the layer it's selected. And watch what's going to happen here. If I've got this rectangle selected right here, and I hit Command D to duplicate, or I choose Edit Duplicate from here, look what happened. It made a new shape inside that layer. Watch what happens when I do it this way. I've got nothing selected. Let's make a star right here, and I'll make it blue just so it stands out. I'll use my arrow right here. So here's my blue arrow all by itself. If I've got my layer selected, not down here, but right here, and I hit Command D, I've got another star layer, okay? If I've got it selected right here, the shape inside, and I hit Command D, it duplicates inside that layer. So just watch what you've got selected. And that's gonna affect how things are duplicated and where they go. I hope some of these tips help you along the way. They're just simple things to look out for when you're working with your motion. Like I said, this is just 3 frames. It's going from 0 to 100 to 0. I just kept duplicating that layer and offsetting it in the timeline. The total effect, it's greater than the sum of all its parts. It's just a simple scaling that's going on. Scaling up, then scaling off. It's all about looking at things. Which brings me back to here. These would be layers made in Photoshop. See what just happened there? So we saw a scaling out. And in the chat, what do you think is going on with this windmill? What stopwatch would you do for that? Your stopwatches are right here. The 4 pillars are, yes, very good, Alexis, rotation. Great job. See, you're learning already. Very good. So that's rotation. Now watch the windmill rotate, okay? I'm gonna hit play. Where would you put that anchor point to get that type of rotation? Exactly. Right here in the center of the windmill. Very good. That's what I like to hear. You're already learning to break things down that you see. You see this fading out, the opacity? These are all just simple shapes. They just, exactly, very good. You could make it in Photoshop and just bring it in as layers and then just move the anchor point where it is on that layer. It's all up to you. That's what motion design is. Looking at something and if you ever want to mess around with some of these concepts, I've got artwork in Canvas. So it'd be, here's this course, all slides and art files. Let's try, see, I've already got some images in these. So if you're watching some of the lectures, the artwork I used is in Canvas. So I'm going to go File, Import File. Here's where I save that cloud. I click Import. I got to drag it into my timeline. And I could have this over top so that it fades on like that. And it's going to hide the cloud that way. So let's do the opposite. Let's turn off that stopwatch. If you click the stopwatch a second time, it deletes all your keyframes. You click it once to keyframe animate, second time to turn it off. So I've already got a solid. I'm going to duplicate it, Command D, put it on top. Remember, what's on top is on top. And to change the color of a solid you've already got, it's Layer, Solid Settings. I'm going to make this black. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to animate the opacity of the black so that it reveals the cloud below it. So I'm going to go from 100% to 0%. So now we've got the fade on, and I know the cloud, I can actually have it moving before the fade on happens. So I select the cloud layer, click position, and then go to where I want the motion to stop. I have to go sideways. And I'm going to have it move even further. I could just click the eyeball icon to hide the black layer above. Turn it back on. Change my render area. And we'll fit this to view. Deselect, hit the space bar. See? It's pixel based. It's yes, that is a very good username. I agree. We're doing a position animation, even though it's, you know, a photo. You can animate whatever you want. Photo, video, text, shapes. It's all the same. Just think about what you want to do. Move your anchor point, then move the playhead, and then click the stopwatch for what you want to change over time. Hopefully this was a little bit helpful. Like I said, the lectures, I delve into it more slowly and in deeper detail, but while I've got you all here, I'm just showing you some of these things that'll help you along the way. So what I'm doing here is I'm streaming and recording at the same time, okay? So it's going to be a very clean, polished final piece. And then I'm going to edit down my actual recording, not the stream. So all your chat and comments, that's going to go bye-bye. And you're only going to have the lecture. That's why when someone's got a question, I repeat it into the microphone so that it's there for the other students. So we see this going on, and then obviously that's a path. That's lovely. I like how they did all that. Here's a little tip. You don't have to change it on my account, don't worry about it. If you're going to be doing something like this, you know, going from artwork to a graphic representation of it, make sure you go to the last frame of your motion and you draw your final logo that way. And then what they did is they just scaled down that. That way everything lines up and there's no jumps. Like everyone's seen jump cuts where stuff moves around erratically in between frames. They just said, okay, this is where this stops moving, and then they just traced over it for their final logo, like that, and then they just scaled it down. Think about when you've got design. See, this is pretty nice. You know, it's very balanced. It's got some contrast. You know, as a designer, there's an information hierarchy. You know, I love this little detail here, but the information hierarchy is, you know, okay, the logo name, it's big, it's dominant. You've got your contrast to separate it all. That's your information hierarchy. When you're dealing with motion design, there's also an animation hierarchy. What's coming in? What's the order it's coming in? How's it coming in? And focusing on all those things will make you a better motion designer. Like the cloud came in from the side. This scaled away from what the perceived camera is. The sun was making an arc as it moved. These are all just, they thought about how stuff was coming in and the order it came in. Here's our cloud right here. And you notice I only animated it on the x-axis. But if I want to get a curve, well, just over time, I move it up. So you can edit your shape here just like it were a path. So now you get that arc motion going on. Okay? Think about that way. It's moving sideways, then up. That's how you get your arches and your arcs. And then you just fine-tune your path however you want. Like such. So when you're watching animated logos, like I said, we've got all that stuff for you to work off of. There's in Canvas, reference files, homework 1. You could just comb through this, look at some of the stuff I've brought in. Studio samples. Let's take a look at this one real fast. These are actual web pages that I found. Another tip, when you're doing your logo, you know, you could do something like films or something like that, but you see, it's not in every single one. The more words you have, the more you gotta animate. Sometimes just 1 or 2 words perfectly animated is the way to go. Like there they use pictures, but look at all that text. You'd have to animate all that, and it's just, you don't need it. I mean, it looks good, you know, it's clean, but, you know, I'd rather see like just colossal and it perfectly animated in how you want like each part of the word. You'll notice a lot of people use film strip. You know, you're doing a logo for a movie or a TV studio. It can be whatever you want. I mean, it can be abstract. It doesn't have to have that film there. But I will show you something while I've got you here. I'm going to draw a path. Okay, so I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click right. Nope. I'm going to click and drag, so I've got a curve. Okay, that's more interesting. I'm going to turn off my fill, and I'm going to turn on the stroke, and I'm going to make it thick enough so that you can see what it is. Let's make it light blue just for the fun of it. All right, and I'm going to move this a little bit. Oops. Like such. And oops, see what happened there when I clicked again with the pen tool? So if I use my arrow tool, then I can move that without closing the shape. Okay. There's a little bit of a delay because I'm streaming and recording at the same time. So I just drew an arc here. You know, that's not impressive. There's nothing interesting about it. I'll twirl down my contents. There's the path. It has a stroke, and there's no fill inside it. So let's see what else we've got going on here. I twirled down my stroke, okay? And look at all these options. Well, there's butt cap. I can make round caps and round joints. Look, now it looks like a marker, but I'm going to stick with that squared off cut. And you go saying, well, why would you do that? Dashes, if I click the plus, I can add dashes to this. You notice the larger the number for the dashes, the further apart they go. All right. I'm just showing you this real fast. You could also taper your strokes. Have a taper in and out. Remember, anything with a stopwatch can be animated. Move the playhead to where you want it. Click on what it is. Move forward. Make your change. I want to go in the opposite direction of that, so I'm going to move in the opposite. So now it's moving forward like film. It's got dimension to it because it's receding into the horizon with the taper I gave it. And if I wanted to, let's try the end. I could taper that if I wanted to. So what I could do is I could taper from here, change that over time. Have it go in the opposite direction if I wanted to. So do that. Let's add some more interest to this. Wave. Add some dips into it if you want. You could also animate that over time, should you choose to. So let's go. I've got this selected. I'm going to add another. No, I'm not. I'm going to duplicate what I've already got. Duplicate. And let's change the color of it so you can see what's happening. I'm going to make it red, just so it stands out. That made them both red. Okay, so I'll go into my stroke. Turn it back to blue. Okay. So here's my first path. What's going to happen if I shrink that one down? That's going to shrink them both. We don't want that to happen. Let's see if I can duplicate that. Okay, so now we've got one shape. Alright, I was too deep into it. So let's clean that up real fast. I'm going to undo that, and I'll run it through you again. Alright. So, remember, it's what you click on that's going to affect everything. I clicked on the path. That's the yo-yo way of doing it. I don't want to do that. All right. I'm going to click on the shape inside that layer and duplicate it. All right. So the top shape is going to be the green, and the shape below it, I'm going to make it red, just so that you can see the difference of what I'm going to do here. All right. Bottom layer is green, top layer is red. Now look what happened. The top layer, the red one, I shrunk the stroke of it. Now I'm getting that film strip look. I just drew the path once, keyframed it, and I duplicated the shape inside the contents. Like such. It's thinking about the possibilities of what you can do. I'm going to undo that. So here's the contents of that shape layer. There's the path. So this path is green. What I did was I gave it some dash, and I animated the offset of the dash. If I duplicate this shape like I did before, I'm going to make the top one red. And I just shrunk that down. Like such. Think about what you want to do. Get it moving right once, and if you want, you could duplicate that, offset it, change it up a bit, give it some interest. And you can get some fast, good results quickly, rather than me saying, oh, well, I want these outside parts of the film strip to animate. No, and let's take a look at this again one more time, real fast, because I like hearing myself talk. I'm going to duplicate this top shape one more time. So this one is green. So I'm going to call this green just to make it easier on everybody. One second. I'm going to hit enter. I'll call it green. This one's red. Those were just the shapes. I'm going to duplicate red by hitting Command D with it selected. I'm going to call this one sprockets. So I want to add some sprockets to this. Well, I'll make the color of my background. And then let's try working on that dash. Wait, 1 second, wrong one right here. Where my dash is right here. So we've got it going on the opposite of what we want. Okay, so now we're getting the sprocket shape. It's not where I want it, so there's got to be a way of moving that up. Let's try changing the anchor point. And you see the whole line moving. Position does the same thing. You can skew it as well if you want. What's going to mess this up is that taper. So let's try. The path itself is not animating. So if I just change that, like such, now we're starting to get that. You know what I mean? So it was grabbing that duplicate and moving the path for it a little bit. I can do the same here by moving it on that end, and you know, it's just a matter of lining things up. I'm just showing you. Let me duplicate that top, get rid of it. Reusing shapes and paths you've already made is a good way of being a more efficient motion designer. You don't always have to go back to the drawing board. Sometimes it's a matter of just duplicating something and sliding it down in your timeline. And don't forget, like I said, you can copy and paste keyframes if you choose to. So if I want to go back to this first shape, I just drag around it, move to where I want to change back to, and paste it back in by hitting Command C and Command V, like that. So get your paths as clean as you want, and you'll be able to get fancier, more interesting motion over time that way. When you bring in your Illustrator layers, if you're not going to convert them into shapes, make sure you continuously rasterize them by clicking back here. Or if you are going to turn it into a shape, you right click on the layer, choose create shapes from vector layers. And we're going to be going over the lectures. Like I said, watch those in your own time, learn the different techniques, and then the labs. I can help you get your homework on track so that you get some nice results quickly. Because you could look at something, like I said with this, and say, hey, this inspired me, and I could break it down what you have trouble doing. Any questions on some of the things I showed you? Now, I know I hit you with a lot tonight, but like I said, when you watch the lectures, this will all make more sense, and you're able to get some ideas on tackling your homework and answer some of those questions. Like, yes, you can do your artwork in Illustrator or Photoshop. Yes, you can bring it in and keep the layers broken down so that you can animate things more easily. So stick to your strengths. If you're good with type, you could do some really great type animations. If you're good with photos, use photos. You know, that's the beauty of motion design. You can do shapes, you can do photos, you can do video, you can do text. It's unlimited. It's just based on your own creativity. Think about the animation hierarchy as well as the information hierarchy. You know, what's most dominant on the screen, what's most important, and then how things are coming in, when they're coming in, and the order they're coming in from. Those are all crucial. Come up with a beautiful logo design, because you're all graphic designers, and then any troubleshooting you need, I'll help you figure out how to animate it. You can do a lot of impressive things just focusing on position, scale, rotation, and opacity. You can push it so much more than that. But as we saw, where you put the anchor point will change the animation based upon how you want things to move. And again, like I said, I use simple shapes just so I can show you these concepts quickly rather than have you watch me draw something beautiful and waste your time. You're here to learn about motion, and that's fastest and easiest to learn with these simple shapes so that you can bring in the artwork you want. A reminder, when you've got a path, to make it something I can see. Okay, that's fine. If you want to animate your path, twirl down to your path, and you just click the stopwatch for that. Then just move forward however you want. I'm going to use my arrow tool. I held down Shift to deselect that one point, then I click on it. You can move the path point. You can also animate the Bezier curve handles, so you can animate both of those. And also, don't forget, if you hold down Alt when you drag, you only will change one side of the Bezier curve handle if that's what you need. The closer your keyframes are, like when you move the playhead, the faster the change will be. And if you always want to go back to something, just copy that first keyframe and paste it wherever you want it to land. When you are at your Google Drive folders, like to get your stuff in, you're going to go to Delegate, okay? And you're going to choose, I'm changing the size of the font right here and the leading, that's all under Character. And to move type around, I go back to my selection arrow. So whenever you're putting something into your Google Drive, do this process. Go to Delegate, then My Apps, Student Mail, the grid at the top right corner of Google. It's like those little gray checker boxes. Click on that, go to Google Drive, Shared with Me, and then there'll be the folder with your name on it, sent to you by me. When you follow this, I'll be able to see it. If you don't follow this step, I may not see your work. Sometimes it's invisible. You got to go through this way for me to be able to see your artwork and for you to be able to see your artwork. So just keep doing it step by step to get into the folder this way so that I'm able to see it and answer all your questions. And when you email me, I can do a quick screen recording to help answer your questions in between labs, just that you can keep moving forward. The most important thing is time management, because I know a lot of you have your graduation shows coming up, plus your other classes. And with motion design, like this first assignment, it's due March 1st, I believe. It's like 10 to 15 seconds long. And, you know, let's say that's 5 weeks. Well, that's doing like 2 seconds of animation each week. So break it down that way and give yourself those goals. But this is important. I talked about the resting logo. You're going to have your resting logo up for like 3 seconds. So if you're doing a 10-second logo animation, it's basically going to resolve itself by the 7-second mark. And the final 3 seconds, it's going to be, you know, resting so that people can view it. Now you can still do subtle little things for those final few seconds, like you could animate glows or have some subtle, interesting motion, like say you've got balloons floating up in the background, whatever. But the majority of the logo should be resting, so it can be seen, and any motion you add to it should be subtle and just giving a little bit of life to it. You know, like what we've got here, like the type. Let's pretend everything came in. Did I animate this? Yeah, so there's my motion, and I'm going to change my settings here so it's 10 seconds. Okay. Right here's where I want it to stop moving, roughly, or if I'm going to add some subtlety to it. Now remember, if you're going to use a logo, an effect, you can drag it onto the layer or placing it over the layer in here. But so quick little tip here, and this is all in later tutorials, but this little crosshair right here, you can click it once and then click on your screen where you want that to be so you can see things more easily. So let's say I want that to be here. Well, these are the final few seconds of my logo, but I want some subtle interest, so I'm going to do a simple light sweep. And that's my center. So I can just go, move forward, and then move that sweep until it's fully off. Let's take a look at that. You've all seen that effect, and that was just 2 keyframes. Here it comes in once it's resolved itself. So I've still got some life and interest to my logo, but that's an example of some subtle motion. Like, here's everything resolving itself, then a little bit of life at the end. That's an example of some subtlety. And I did that by putting a CC light sweep effect on it and animating the center. The center, as you see, let me slow it. It's right here, this little orb thing. So let me click that. That's what's creating the effect. I just animated that motion. And what I did here, I clicked this little solo button right here on the layer I wanted to solo, and it's going to hide everything else in my layer stack. So it's just a quick way of soloing out a layer. So like I said, you can comb through the reference materials, or if you have an idea for a logo, look at it. Look at your shapes. How are they going to come in? What are they going to do? And how's it going to resolve itself? Think on that, and next week you can start, working on your logos, uploading the artwork, and email me with any questions you have, or attend the virtual lab times. I'm going to send out a poll this weekend of who can attend what time. And if you can't make it to the live stream, that's fine. I'm going to record it, and I'll send my recording, the link to it, and you'll be able to learn off of it that way. Just get me your questions ahead of time, and I'll address them in the virtual virtual lab. So everyone have a great weekend. I hope you all have a great semester, and motion design is very fun. Just think about what you want to do and then figure out how you're going to get there. But a lot of your things will be around position, scale, rotation, and transparency. Move the anchor point, because that's going to drive the motion. Then start your keyframing. Again, like I said, watch the lectures for this week, and they'll tackle basically everything we did tonight. And reach out to me if you've got any questions or concerns. You've got my email. Make sure you put the number 2 at the end, because that's part of my email address. So it's mrobleski2@dccc.edu. All right, so have a great weekend, and feel free to email me, and I'll answer any questions you've got. And like I said, I can record my screen and guide you through it step by step. And I'll go at a slower pace so that you can absorb it. And you've got all the lectures, for the whole semester already in the Canvas. So it's just, right there. And there's the links, or you could go to announcements, and they're right there. And each week, if there's anything I want to announce, I'll send an announcement. Like, I'll send out the poll, hey, what time can everyone try and meet? And, like I said, you can learn virtually, and you can learn a lot. So I'm here for you, and I want you to get the best work possible to help you in the job market once you're out of school. That's what's crucial. That's why I'm teaching you these modern techniques and focusing on time management and duplicating layers and copying keyframes, because it's, if you've already got the shape you want, copy that keyframe and paste it where you want it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel twice. There's ways of working smarter and still getting very polished professional results. Have a great weekend, everyone. And like I said, feel free to reach out to me. And if you find any animations you like, send me the link to it, and I'll watch it and I'll help you break it down. And if it's using techniques or plugins that you can't do in After Effects, I'll let you know. But I'll try and find something comparable to what you're looking at. All right, excellent. Great meeting all of you, and have a fantastic semester.